then how can
Okay.
you trust your own thoughts and reasonings if they're based on a standard that you can't even prove exists? It doesn't even matter to atheism. How can you
What do you mean?
trust it?
Are you asking me how I know there are laws of logic?
No, I'm saying how would you
No.
account for laws of logic in a world where only natural things exist?
Couldn't reason give us knowledge of reality even if the senses deceive us? Well, of course, the earlier rationalists would have taken exactly that position. And Plato subsequently will take that position. But the sophists do not. They hold the view that reason depends upon the evidence of the senses, which is quite correct. They're entirely correct on this point. And they say, therefore, if the senses give each of us only our own private subjective world, then our so-called rational conclusions are each of them true only for that private individual, only for his private world, are true only for him. Now, the arch mark of a sophist in today's world is anybody who puts the word for after the word true. There's two kinds of people. The people who say this is true, and people who say this is true for me, for you, for him, for her, for it, for us, for etc. As soon as anybody puts for on, that is the tip-off that he is a subjectivist, that he does not believe you can make a statement about reality, that everybody has his own private little world, and in your little world there might be a God, and therefore it's true for you, but in my little world there isn't, and therefore it's not true for me, and so on. Now that goes back to the sophist viewpoint. Now most people today can't even defend that viewpoint. The sophists at least derived it from an overall epistemology. But we were hypothesizing in this section that reality consisted of puffs of energy, something completely inconceivable to us at this moment. And that when those energy puffs acted on us, on our senses, the result was the physical world as we see it. That is, we're making the most extravagant claim in favor of the skeptics. The world in itself, quote, is completely unlike the way it looks to us. And I say, even granted that, and I remember clearly the day in Ayn Rand's apartment when I put that question to her, and she led me down this very indignantly down the passage that I'm giving you from 65 to 67. She said, well, suppose it is that. Are you part of reality? And I said, yes. She said, then you're made of the puffs too. I said, yeah, I guess so. She said, did you create yourself out of the puffs? No. Are they a function of your consciousness? No, I can't. This is not her exact wording, but this is the idea. Well, I can't quite communicate the degree of indignation. She said, well, then in sense perception, what happens? I said, well, the puffs out there interact with the puffs which are me. And she said, do you control the effect? I know, I have nothing to do with the effect. So in other words, her point was the elements in reality, including you, interact independent of your will or consciousness entirely. And the inevitable result of that is a red, green, hot, cold, etc. world. Now, you're telling me something is inherent in and absolutely unavoidable given the fundamental nature of reality. It's a metaphysical given, expressive of the very essence of reality without any will or consciousness being involved. Now, how can you say, therefore, it's unreal? And, of course, I was completely flabbergasted. And she made there all these points that I'm making here, that you don't subvert the reality of something by explaining it. You don't make something subjective by identifying the causes that underlie it. You don't wipe something out by explaining it. She was even more eloquent, but that's the most I can remember of. I tried to recapture her. That was a revelation to me, because where all the naive realists in history struggle to say, oh, the red really is out there in the object. Our senses contribute nothing whatever, and they're always on the defensive about the senses. She took the bull by the horns and said, it's irrelevant whether the red is produced by our senses or is an attribute of atoms. She said, the fact is, whichever, something in reality caused it, including you as part of reality. And you can't ask any more of the senses than that they give you reality somehow. And it's one of those things like, who created the universe? You have to get to the point of saying, I won't ask that. Who created it? It wasn't created. It is. Existence exists. And the same thing with the senses. You can't keep saying, but I want to see the world know-how. I'd like to pull away my eyes and get to see the way things, quote, really are. As long as you have that, that is the equivalent in epistemology of trying to find a God that produced existence. You have to perceive somehow. There is no other meaning to the word perceive. Perceive is use your consciousness, including its organs. And if you accept that, you have no problem. If you don't, nobody can do anything for you. And it's like a mental reorientation. One day you simply have to make a resolution. Okay, I'll accept it if that's the way reality is. And then you have no problem. Now, I wanted to point out that while it's true it makes no difference where red is, and there is a sense in which you can say, no, it's not in the object. It's a result of an interaction. It's a false dichotomy to talk about in the object versus in the mind. Because in a deeper sense, everything is in the object. Everything is in the object. And this is expressed on page 67. I'd like to just call your attention starting about 5 lines down there on 67. Consciousness is only a faculty of awareness. It doesn't create its content or even the sensory form in which it's aware of that content. That's a result of an interaction. And here's the key sentence, I think, that summarizes it very clearly. The source of a sensory form, that is red, green, etc., is not consciousness, but existential fact independent of consciousness. In other words, the source is the metaphysical nature of reality itself. Now, I don't think you can beat that as a formulation. And that means reality itself is the source of everything we perceive. And in that sense, everything we perceive is part of reality. If you can accept that, you can perfectly legitimately say everything is out there. Red is out there, even if red is our form of perceiving what's out there, because our form itself is a result of the interaction of objects with our senses, which are also physical objects existing in reality and following its laws. You got that? So, I mean, this is either easy or unintelligible. I don't think there's a middle ground here.